Adeel Hussain was the kind of man who kept to himself. A software engineer living in Karachi, he had few close friends and no known enemies. His life revolved around his work, his small but neat apartment, and an occasional night out with colleagues. To those who knew him, he was quiet, polite, and unremarkable. That's why when he was found dead in his apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, the police were baffled. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle, and nothing appeared stolen. But there was one chilling detail: the door was locked from the inside. When officers arrived at Adeel's apartment, they found him slumped over his desk, his laptop still open, the cursor blinking on an unfinished email. His teacup sat beside him, untouched except for a single sip. There was no blood, no bruises, nothing to suggest a violent struggle. It looked like he had simply fallen asleep and never woken up. But as forensic examiners checked his body, they found something disturbing: the faint scent of almonds lingering near his mouth, a telltale sign of cyanide poisoning. The autopsy later confirmed it. Adeel had been poisoned, the cyanide dose so potent that he would have died within minutes of ingestion. The forensic team determined he had consumed the poison between 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m. the previous night. With no sign of forced entry, the police believed the killer had to be someone Adeel knew, someone he had willingly let into his home. Investigators started piecing together Adeel's last days. His colleagues reported nothing unusual. He had gone to work, attended meetings, and even joked about an upcoming software release. His neighbors hadn't seen any suspicious visitors. But when detectives checked his call records, they found something interesting. Adeel had received a call at 7:58 p.m., lasting precisely 32 seconds. The number was unregistered, a burner phone. Surveillance footage from his apartment building provided another clue. At 7:50 p.m., a woman in a dark hoodie entered the building. She kept her head down, her face partially obscured by her hood. She didn't use the elevator but took the stairs. Just 40 minutes later, at 8:30 p.m., she was seen leaving, walking quickly but not running. The police zoomed in on the footage, looking for identifiable features. And then they saw it: her shoes. They were a distinctive pair of white sneakers with a unique design, a limited edition release from a local shoe boutique. Only a handful of people in the city owned them. Detectives tracked down the boutique and found a record of a recent purchase. The buyer? A woman named Hina Javed. Hina was Adeel's ex-girlfriend. They had dated for nearly 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago. Friends described their relationship as intense. Hina had been deeply attached to Adeel, and when he ended things abruptly, she had taken it hard. She had even sent him several messages in the weeks after the breakup, demanding closure, but Adeel had stopped responding. Eventually, it seemed like she had moved on. Or so everyone thought. When police questioned Hina, she claimed she hadn't seen or spoken to Adeel in months. She insisted she had been home on the night of his death, watching movies alone. But when detectives checked her phone records, they found something suspicious. Not only had she called Adeel that night, but she had also searched for information about cyanide poisoning just 2 weeks prior. Even more damning, she worked as a laboratory assistant at a medical research facility, one that handled small quantities of cyanide for experiments. With mounting evidence, police obtained a warrant to search Hina's apartment. What they found sealed her fate. In her trash bin, they discovered an empty vial with traces of cyanide. On her kitchen counter, they found a crumpled-up note, a draft of what seemed to be an apology letter to Adeel, one she had never sent. During interrogation, Hina broke down. She confessed that she had planned the murder carefully. She had bought the burner phone to contact Adeel without raising suspicion. She had visited his apartment under the pretense of wanting to talk things through. She had made him a cup of tea, laced with cyanide. She had watched as he took a sip, waited for him to slump over, and then wiped down any surfaces she had touched before locking the door from inside and slipping out unnoticed. She had thought she had planned the perfect crime. But in the end, it was the smallest detail, the shoes, that unraveled her plan. Hina Javed was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During her trial, she tried to argue that she had acted in a moment of passion, but the prosecution painted a different picture. This was a calculated act of revenge, planned meticulously over weeks. The jury agreed. She was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. Adeel Hussain's case became a textbook example of how even the most carefully planned crimes can fall apart due to one small mistake. It was also a reminder that justice, no matter how delayed, always finds its way to the truth.